or a soft drink. I've never even had a Roshagulla, and I'm Bengali, so you know it's a serious problem. For as long as I can remember, I have had a difficulty with food. I was the picky eater, the friend who took lunch boxes everywhere and had dinner before going to the restaurant. My nutrition was not on par and my parents were concerned. I remember one time my mother sat me down, handed me a banana and told me that I shouldn't leave the room until I had it. It took me an hour before I bucked up the courage, and as soon as I took a bite, my mouth froze. I spat it out. Eventually, my parents realized that there was something deeper to my eating problems, but we didn't have the information to move forward from that. During the lockdown, like most of us, I spent a lot of my time on the internet. And one fateful day, I came across something called AFID, Avoidance/Restrictive Food Intake Disorder. Like the name suggests, it's an eating disorder. But unlike the more commonly known ones like anorexia or bulimia, it has nothing to do with body image. People with this condition are put off by certain textures or colors, and even the physical act of eating, like chewing or swallowing. It's characterized by fear and disinterest in food, and people with this condition often miss out on entire food groups. Hearing that line struck a chord with me. Like I said, I'd never eaten a fruit, and this was the first time I realized that I wasn't the only person in the whole world who was like this. Now, AFID is a relatively nebulous condition. It was only recognized as a psychological diagnosis in 2013. Even so, I was incredibly excited. I finally had a name for what I'd been struggling with my whole life and felt that this meant I could talk about it with people. Unfortunately, this didn't really go to plan. Most people hadn't heard of it and felt it sounded made up when I told them about it. The lack of excitement in the response made me retreat. I felt that if nobody could understand it, I shouldn't try to explain it to them. A couple of years ago, I joined therapy for other reasons and decided I might as well make the most of it while I was there. I told my therapist about my history with food and the research that led me to AFID, and she was able to treat me for it. We started cognitive behavioral therapy and exposure therapy. Exposure therapy included things like holding an apple for a whole session just to get used to how it felt. And cognitive behavioral therapy included digging deep and reframing my relationship with food. Like I said, it's characterized by fear. I was genuinely terrified of food, and it's impossible to avoid it. Imagine being faced with your biggest fear 3 times a day, every day. Outings and gatherings with friends and family that should be enjoyable became nerve-wracking for me. Somebody would always call out my unusual eating habits, and though it wasn't with malicious intent, I was mortified. The other aspect is the disinterest. One time I went for a meal with my family, and a relative of mine compared me to my brother, who's a complete foodie. She said she pitied me because he derived such pleasure from food, and I was missing out on that. Hearing this confused me. I never looked at a food and thought of it as appetizing and something that I should try. This disinterest is a characteristic of AFID. It's what keeps individuals with this condition from expanding their food repertoire. I've always characterized foods as safe or unsafe. Safe foods are the ones that I have or have had without a negative response, and unsafe foods are the ones that I have had a negative response to or don't have the courage to try. One of my overarching therapy assignments has been reframing my relationship with food and forming new opinions. Anytime I see a friend eating something that doesn't immediately trigger a negative response in me, I try the tiniest bit. I know it sounds overly simple, but I'm happy to report that I've seen some true progress with this. Since starting therapy, I've tried bagels, fries, mango juice, and scrambled eggs, and many more. I still haven't tried a fruit, but I promise I'm working towards it. It's important to talk about journeys like this because I went my whole life without knowing there was a name for what I was going through. Most people chalked it down to picky eating. Picky eating is a developmental disorder that affects people who eat purely based on their likes or preferences. It's something that you naturally grow out of, and a picky eater could eat something that they didn't necessarily like or enjoy if it came down to it. Somebody with AFID does not grow out of it. It actively hampers their psychosocial functioning and ability to participate in events involving food. Raising awareness makes a world of a difference. Most people don't know about this condition, and this kept me from discovering it for myself. It took me a long time to accept it as a valid struggle that I should seek help for. Somebody you know could be struggling with something similar, and this gives you the power to help them. If not that, learning about the very nature of things people go through silently sharpens our sensitivity and makes us more empathetic and understanding as people. Thank you.